now at the U.S.-Israel relationship. And for that, we are joined by Jonathan S. Tobin. He's editor-in-chief for JNS, the Jewish News Syndicate. He's also a freelance columnist for publications like Newsweek and the New York Post. Jonathan, thank you for joining us this evening. We know Israel is now moving deeper into Rafah despite threats from the U.S. to withhold weapons aid if they continued that offensive. At what point does the U.S. follow through with its warnings to Israel?
Well, that's not entirely clear because the Biden administration's statements on the war are contradictory. They still say that they're in favor of Israel completely defeating and eliminating Hamas, but then they say you can't go into the last place where Hamas has its strongholds and are still firing on Israel, firing on just this week, firing on the places where Israel is allowing aid into Gaza, like in Karen. So the only way to eliminate Hamas is to eliminate them in Rafah, and that's what it comes down to. And as much as there is always debate about whether Prime Minister Netanyahu should stay in office in Israel, there's really a very strong consensus that the war has to be finished, and that means going into Rafah, eliminating Hamas, because there's another factor that is not usually reported in the Western press. There are hundreds of thousands of Israeli refugees, people who had to flee their homes in the south near the Gaza border and in the north where Hezbollah has made the northern border with Lebanon uninhabitable. And there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis living with relatives or living in hotels. The hotels in Tel Aviv are full, but they're full of Jewish refugees, not tourists. Those people can't go home until Hamas is finally defeated. And that's why any government of Israel, no matter who is leading it, is going to have to do this, no matter what Joe Biden says. And they also know that Biden's motivations are not so much strategic as they are political, because he's facing heat from the left wing of the Democratic Party.
Well, speaking of President Biden and his administration, if the U.S. does follow through with its threat to withhold weapons aid, how do you think that would impact the relationship between the U.S. and Israel going forward?
Well, obviously, it is unprecedented. Many American administrations have had spats with Israeli governments, and many of them have at times threatened to withhold arms. Some at times have, but never in the middle of a war, never after Israel had been attacked, and never in order to basically save a terrorist organization. You know, people point back to the 1970s and what Henry Kissinger did to stop Israel from completely defeating Egypt, rather than just giving them a setback at the end of the Yom Kippur War. But the aim there was peace between two states, not between Israel and a terrorist organization whose only goals are A, destroy the state of Israel, and B, commit the genocide of its Jewish population. There's no negotiating with Hamas, so Israel has no choice. Now, as far as the future ramifications of this, it's not clear how that will play out. I also think contrary to what I think some people in the White House think, who are primarily interested in appeasing the left wing of the Democratic Party, which is very hostile to Israel, and the people who are going into the streets calling for a ceasefire, or basically mouthing slogans that seem to be supporting Hamas, there are far more votes to be lost in the center of the American political spectrum. From pro-Israel people, the majority of Israelis still support Israel, oppose Hamas, think Israel is in the right to defend itself. So as far as the future, I think President Biden needs to remember, nothing in a democracy is permanent. And if Donald Trump wins in November, he is vowing to repair any damage that Joe Biden does to the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of JNS.org. Thank you so much for your insight this evening.
Thank you.